You're listening to Retail Disrupted, a podcast that explores the latest industry developments and the trends that will shape how we shop in the future. I'm your host, Natalie Berg. On today's episode, I'm going to be sharing my fireside chat with the ex-boss of Pandora and The Body Shop, Jeremy Schwartz. My conversation with Jeremy was recorded live on stage at the Richmond Retail and E-commerce Directors Forum. This episode is available in both audio and video formats, so if you prefer to watch the discussion, you can pause now and head over to YouTube. Now, a little bit more about Jeremy. He was the turnaround CEO of Pandora, the world's largest jewelry company with 2,500 stores and e-commerce sites in 90 countries. Prior to that, Jeremy was the chairman and CEO of The Body Shop from 2013 to 2017. He also previously spent time at Sainsbury's, and as brand director, he was the architect of the grocer's turnaround in 2005, which saw a decade of growth after years in decline. He is the former managing director of L'Oreal UK, and as innovation director for Coca-Cola Europe, he invented Coke Zero. Jeremy is currently the chairman of Kantar's Sustainability Transformation Practice. So as if we didn't already have enough material to delve into, we're also going to be talking about ESG and what retailers can do in this space. Lots to discuss, and I really hope you enjoy this conversation. There are a lot of retailers and brands out there that are still finding life difficult. And I think what we're seeing is that even if these are much loved brands, even if these are brands with a ton of heritage, they're not immune to the challenges facing the high street. So I'm not going to name and shame, but it's tough out there for some brands. As a turnaround specialist, what is it that these businesses are getting wrong?
On the turnaround of Sainsbury's and the turnaround of Pandora, and if after this, have a look, because frankly, the turnaround of both of those surprised me at the speed with which we went from continual decline to turnaround. I mean, it was amazing and incredible. In both instances, it came from a detailed understanding of what is the truth or insight behind the customer. In fact, with Sainsbury's, I engaged Clinton's political strategist, pollster, and I said, we're going to run the turnaround of Sainsbury's like running an election. We're going to set an election date, and we're going to poll Tesco floating customers to work out what we would have to say to get them to come to Sainsbury's and not to Tesco. The whole turnaround, which was 10 years of decline, and in February of 2005, we went to +5, and Justin King then had 10 years of growth. It all came from the insights of what do we need to do. With Pandora, it was the same. Just to quickly summarize, the company, I'm sure most of you have either bought or given or received the charm. They'd walked away from charms as the core that made them the biggest jewelry company in the world, because you have to buy 5 or 6 or 7. You don't have to buy 5 rings or 5 necklaces. But they got distracted by all these other products. They felt that the fashion for them had disappeared. And actually, I went onto an Instagram site. On Instagram, there was a whole lot of people who were buying 20 or 30 charms a month and then creating nice little Instagram posts. And I put a DM saying, could I have a chat to you? I'm the CEO of Pandora. I'd like to speak to you as a passionate supplier or user. I have to say, she came back to me and said, go away, weirdo. I don't believe you're the CEO. So I had to say, no, go on Google. I am the CEO. Look at my name. And then we had a chat. And she told me, for example, several things, she and another insight, was that we were promoting so heavily that the passionate core heavy buyers were losing interest in faith, and actually also just saying, right, we'll wait till the promotion comes. But the core thing is the people who really made the brand, the big buyers, were losing faith in us because we were chasing the transient buyer with promotions. And therefore, in that example, for example, we cut promotions by 40% and saw the business grow, which is totally counterintuitive. So those companies are going under. Some of them are structurally not relevant anymore. But lots of times they've just not changed anything. And they just hope that things will get better as opposed to radical change if required.
Yeah. So it kind of goes back to my previous point of standing still being a dangerous thing to do in retail.
And you said disrupting, disrupt yourself is a better place than being disrupted.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is a case of disrupt or be disrupted, isn't it? It's retail Darwinism. You touched on the customer and how different everyone in this room is in terms of style and hairstyles. And I think customer needs generally are becoming highly individualized, and we can't put customers into neat little boxes like we used to be able to. But just for the sake of this question, we're going to try.
Yeah, definitely. We should, because I'll tell you there's a strange paradox.
Okay. Okay, no, you go ahead then.
The paradox is, in all the data I've seen, that at the very time we're becoming atomized, I like that word because you know, we are totally individual in everything we do. And you could look at, if I looked at all your TikTok, you are on TikTok or Instagram, every one of you would be looking at different stuff. At the same time, when we then say, let's try and segment people, we find you do cluster. We all cluster. And actually, one of the most shocking examples of that was when I was in the elephant in the room, which was the CEO of The Body Shop in 2013 to 2017.
You said it.
I did. Well, I thought I should. Let's get there. Sales started to decline worldwide in 60 countries in the same way. And it was like, Christ almighty, are people talking on social media? How can every country be declining? Well, we had put some prices up in a way we hadn't observed, and customers around the world were responding in the same way. So we are at the same time atomized and at the same time still herdy in segments. And it's trying to work out, are you in the herdy bit and the segments, or are you atomized? And that's what we have to try and balance.
Yeah, absolutely. But I guess just for the sake of the question,
Yeah.
I'd say broadly speaking,
Yeah.
how have you seen customer expectations evolve? What are the most notable changes that you've witnessed in terms of shopping behavior?
You know, I think there's three that I think are important. The first one is we all want more convenience. And the convenience that we want, we're never satisfied with. As we get things like Wi-Fi on planes, and then it suddenly doesn't work. It's like, what the hell's happened to the Wi-Fi, for God's sake? I need my Wi-Fi, I'm on the plane. You know, that piece of technology is incredible. By the way, I've just stolen that from a comedian, so I'll just tell you that. But nonetheless, it is a truth that, you know, our intolerance is continual, and therefore we have to be continually finding more and more convenient solutions if we want to engage people. I think the other thing is that we are both wanting new things, and we get bored with the new things quicker than ever before. So the idea that we can just do something and then it's going to be fine for the next 2 years, whether it's a store design, an e-commerce site, the PLP page, the copy we write, the video we put on there, all of that we have to continually say it can have a lifetime of... Actually, let me just tell you, after this, I'm running out of the room, I'm getting to the airport, I'm flying to Dublin to do a speech. I'm doing a speech to a company that builds data centers for Amazon and Netflix. They're telling me that their data centers used to last for 4 years before they'd have to rebuild them. And now, because of NVIDIA and AI, they are only lasting 18 months. So the speed with which even things like building a data center have to be unbuilt. And therefore, what we're doing is just accelerating, and that's why we have to go faster, and that's why we call this, you know, acting fast. Because speed is critical.
Absolutely. And you touched on convenience, which I think is absolutely true. I think as consumers, you know, we get used to the next new shiny thing, and then we just want the next new shiny thing, and it's perpetual, isn't it? But I guess at the same time, sustainability is a concern, and I know with your work at Kantar, this is something that you're very close to. And I just wonder, what are you seeing from a consumer perspective? Obviously, I think we've seen a little bit of a deprioritization of green purchases because of the cost of living crisis, but it feels like it is firmly back on the agenda, and that customers want to make better choices. They want to buy products that are better for the environment. They don't always want to make sacrifices, whether that's convenience or cost. What are you seeing in this space?
So let me share some data because, you know, with Kantar, we've got the world's biggest data tracking company. We've got data across every country in the world on this subject. And the common story is that country by country by country, category by category by category, 68% of people say they want to buy sustainable products. But on average, across all those countries and all those categories, 28% of people say at the point of purchase, they actually do. And when we ask, well, why is there a gap? The number one reason, or the three reasons actually, the number one is a perception that the price is more expensive for the sustainable product than the non-sustainable product. And frankly, I'm on a big mission on this subject because what's happening is manufacturers believe that they have the right, and I'm choosing my words carefully here and slowly because I want to label it with you or hit you with it. they have the right to charge a premium on a product that's sustainable versus the non-sustainable product. That is wrong. What I'm championing now through Kantar is that every FMCG company has to start with what I call price match pricing. Your starting position is that a sustainable product should be priced at exactly the same price as your non-sustainable product. Because if you don't do that, our price elasticity shows that people will not pay a premium unless the differences are substantial. And you can make the difference. Tesla, we can say, is the most beautiful example of a sustainable product with differentiated benefits, but most, are hard to see or not valued enough. So start with price match pricing. Yes, you might say your costs are higher, but then work on cutting your costs or looking at other benefits you can bundle in so that there is a justification if you need to put a price on.
That's really interesting. And I think also the lack of transparency is potentially a barrier from a customer point of view as well, because, as customers, we're so informed when it comes to things like pricing and reviews and product information, but actually we're kind of fumbling in the dark when it comes to sustainability.
Well, in fact, so the second two reasons that they give for not purchasing are, number one, they can't find the sustainable product. And then secondly, they can't disaggregate, well, what is sustainable about this product? And can I read it? Can I see it? Can I find it? Do I understand it? So you're absolutely right.
Yeah, interesting. I want to ask one more question about sustainability, and then I'm going to open it up to the floor. I thought it was really interesting from the BRC manifesto. They said that 1/3 of every UK citizen's carbon footprint comes from the goods that they buy. So retail plays a vital role in helping to reduce emissions as a society. Now, as the industry moves towards net zero over the next decade, I'd love to know what you make of the progress that retailers have made in their sustainability efforts and what might help them to accelerate their plans for decarbonization.
I don't know if what I'm seeing is that retailers are not that committed. They are doing what is required, but are they taking actions to be leaders? I'm questioning. Obviously, they actually are mainly dependent on their suppliers in some ways, and the company that I'm most excited by at the moment, and I think it's a benchmark reference, is, of all things, Flora Margarine. I don't know if you've seen that as having been sold by Unilever. They're run by a private equity company, and they've launched a couple of months ago a new, completely non-plastic cardboard packaging that's going to be on their 2 billion products. Now, that's the first time I've really seen a fast-moving consumer good completely replace plastic with an alternative that's price-matched and that seems to have the same performance. I hope to be speaking to them probably tomorrow to talk to them about this. But I'm not so sure if we've seen that much.
Yeah.
And I think it's important we say that so that we don't be too congratulatory. We need to see more action. And my view on this subject is that politicians are not going to save this planet. It is companies that are going to do it. Consumers aren't, because they're going to follow and they want to make decisions at point of purchase around price and convenience and what makes their life simple and easy. Therefore, it's people in this room, it's all of us as leaders in companies that are going to save this planet by inventing solutions like Flora and others. And that's what I would request of you, inspire you, and challenge you to take that mantle. I'm very passionate about this subject, and the rain has made me even more passionate.
Fantastic. Great. This feels like a good time to open up to questions. Does anyone have a question for Jeremy at this point? We've got one right here. Yes. I think if we could just wait for a microphone.
There's one coming from behind you here. Behind you, the gentleman behind you.
Hello.
Hello.
Is it on? Yes. I really liked the term treacle meetings, and I think that probably a lot of people in this room have treacle meetings, and generally the reason why we have that is because senior directors, people have been there for a long time, obviously have their opinions and their wisdom, and I think you said quite eloquently that what you do is you combat that with data. But I was at a conference last year, and someone similar to yourself said their advice to businesses and companies is go and find the youngest people in their organisation, listen to them, and promote them to the top. So data is one way of kind of getting your change through, but what do you actually do? The treacle is still there.
Yeah.
How do you fight the treacle, and how do you kind of flip this? Because as I say, everything is innovating so fast. We need to be looking at the younger people to kind of understand what we need to do.
So thank you for your fantastic question. I'm going to give you two answers, two very, very concrete things you can do. So L'Oreal, which is the world's biggest cosmetic company, 40 billion turnover, grows its EBITDA every single year. In every important meeting, the boss, whether it's the CEO, whether it's me, not being important, but in my level, the first person we turn to in a meeting is to the youngest person. And we say, look, we're discussing this, what's your point of view? And then we work up the hierarchy. Now, the reason we do this is for three reasons. The first is because we want to hear the views of young people who, I believe, fundamentally bring us fresh, dynamic, unimpaired thoughts, and we need to listen to them more than ever because they're more connected even. The second thing is it teaches them and trains them how to participate in thinking. But the third reason, which was never expressed, but I can tell you is the truth, it gives me as the boss time to get mine into the best thinking I possibly can, because I nick everybody's good ideas and then represent them as mine. So so to answer your question, actually the answer is a lot on the boss's shoulders to change. So that's point one. Because I speak, one of the things I tell most leadership team audiences who I mainly speak to is something I put in place in Pandora and was transformational, which is I looked at myself and said, bosses have this belief that we should be the gatekeeper in meetings. People come to the meeting to ask permission, and I'm the gatekeeper. I stand on high and I give my pronouncements. What happens if I reverse my role and actually I put myself at the bottom of my triangle and my whole objective is to shut up? And my only role is to empower or remove problems that my teams come and tell me that they are seeking to have a solution to. And therefore, their only role in the meeting is to bring me the problem that they can't solve, they need me to arbitrate or make a point on. But other than that, I don't talk, and they don't come with just updates. They come with things that need to be acted on. That dramatically changed the efficiency of the meetings, the role of the meetings, the speed of decisions, the empowerment. And therefore, I think, as in Agile, we need a reinvention of the role of bosses and the role of meetings so that we can go quicker. Would you like to try that? I would like, the thing with these two thoughts is, please go and try them and test them because they work. And number two, it could create a revolution in your company with two really quite small ideas. Okay?
Great. Any other questions at this point? One just over there.
By the way, I'm completely and only here for you. So please use this chance. If you don't agree with me or you want to add a build, speak up because we're here friends together for 30 minutes and so on to make the most. So don't hold back, please. It's for your advantage.
Hi.
If I can help.
Is that on? Can you hear me? So I was thinking about the way that big companies use data and why they collect it, and especially thinking back to your experience at Sainsbury's. And whether I think there are opportunities for people to do much more for the customer with the data. So I was speaking with a supermarket in Scandinavia where they collect similar kinds of data to Tesco's and Sainsbury's here, but the way they use it is much more innovative. So they would say to somebody, for example, in the loyalty program, we've looked at your basket, your shop for this week, and looked at all the products that you're interested in, that you like to buy. And if you substituted product X for product Y, you would have a better carbon footprint, for example. So serving that data back to the customer in really useful ways that could make a difference to them, which links into your service. So do you see that as an area where companies here could do much more? Because it seems to me often the data is only looked at in terms of how can we drive more sales, how can we make more money, rather than how can we help the customer.
So I think I've got three responses from my experience. So what I felt when I was both the CEO of The Body Shop and Pandora was I had, as retailers, we have phenomenal volumes of data, as you can imagine. Every single transaction in every single store, every single minute by every single customer. And my big grapple was, how can I get insight from this? In fact, in 2018, I made a program for BBC in business called Retail's AI Revolution, where I wanted to expose and to express how AI, even in 2018, was being used by retailers powerfully to both analyze the data, but also bring chat and the various tools to the consumer. But my first problem was, how can I have the expertise to actually just find me insights or patterns? Actually, I was looking for patterns within the data. And I, first of all, would say that journey has not finished for anybody. AI, and there's a company in America I've been using called pattern recognition, is one of the tools to help unlock it. It's not exclusively, but it's there. So that's my first point. My second point is that, to find those ideas, in my experience, you've got to start with this idea of hypothesis. Because data itself tells you nothing. And if you crack it into segments, it will tell you just what it sees. You've got to start by saying, I wonder if I could find a way of substituting a product, and would the data help me do that? And therefore, the third part to actually using data is also still speaking to humans. Because I find when you speak to humans, they tell you the weird stuff. They may not even tell you it. It can be the store, a store colleague or an econ colleague. I go to them and say, tell me something to surprise me. I did that in the middle of New Zealand, in a store in the middle of New Zealand. I was there for one day, terrible for carbon, but I had to just go and do some store checks. I said, tell me something to surprise me. He said, this product is always out of stock. And I rang up the head office operation guys about 3 o'clock in the morning and said, man, why is this product always out? So, it's been out of stock for 3 months. The forecasts are always wrong. And I said, well, why are they always wrong? He said, well, nobody's taken any notice of the fact that it's always selling out. And we then tried to find out why, and found that a Chinese person had written a blog saying this product stopped hair loss. And every Chinese in every country, near every store where they were students or working, were just buying all this product. So I wouldn't have found that. I should have found that through the data. Somebody should have bought it. But actually bringing the human aspect to the hypothesis, to the data, I think is the way to find those opportunities. So in answer to your question, yes, there are huge amounts of opportunity. How you get that, I think, is the interesting question to be exploring, as I've just tried to give you 3 examples. Does that answer your question? More or less. More or less. I'll take that as a green, as my scorecard. So go on, sorry, say something.
In terms of the whole way that people think, what do we want to do with our data?
Yes.
Don't they want to better serve the customer rather than always looking at it in a very commercial way?
Yes, yes, yes. Well, I think it comes back to the very thesis of this speech and discussion, which is transforming insight into action. The objective, I think, of that would be to drive sales in the end, yeah? I mean, if you're going to switch somebody, they're going to then be more happy that they're going to come and buy from you. So it is switching sales. But it's trying to find those insights that leads to opportunities that then will result in sales. And my proposition to you is that you've got to start with an attitude of hypothesizing and wondering and curiosity, as opposed to, I know the answer, just give it to me, or the data is what the data is saying. You've got to drill into it. I can talk more about drilling into data in a minute. I'll let somebody else ask a question and come back to that, actually.
I think we'll take one more question just here.
So my question is a follow-up to what you were saying earlier about decarbonization and how retailers really are dependent on their suppliers. And so obviously, in their manufacturing base, substituting lower impact materials or promoting energy efficiency or decarbonization in the factories, this is great, but it can really only take you so far in terms of decarbonization. And so a lot of people have been talking about the need to reinvent retail business models and look for more circular opportunities.
Definitely.
But I haven't seen that many that are really working,
No.
And they're expensive to invest in.
Yeah.
And so I'm just curious what you're seeing or kind of what your prediction might be in terms of how businesses can do this effectively.
I think there's 3 ways, well, a couple of ways I'm going to answer that. I think the first one is the inertia of consumers driven by our love of convenience that we've been educated so brilliantly on for the last 50 years. Means that for the majority, and not the eco group that are small but growing everywhere. So taking a snapshot today is not a good answer to a snapshot in a year or even 2 years, because that group, and we are, I'm sure many of us, that group, not perhaps at the dedicated level, will grow. And by the way, without a doubt, I believe that as floods increase in Dubai, as we've just seen here, etc., we are going to react more aggressively, either as consumers or regulators or companies, because we're seeing firsthand what's happening. But to overcome the inertia is tough. However, we are seeing lots of exciting initiatives that are working, and I think the resale and reuse of fashion clothing, particularly the luxury reselling, is very exciting, and I got involvement in a couple of those businesses. So where the value proposition means that people are willing to do it, I think we can see a definite interest in that. I think I've been talking a lot to a particular entrepreneur who has got an idea, which he's done, and he actually did it for John Lewis, which is a circular purchase, where you purchase the clothing, but you get a price told to you on your app as to the value on return, so that you get a digital driven value for returning. And I think these models will improve, but they do feel less convenient. And therefore, I think it's going to be the opinion leaders who lead it, and then potentially many of us or other of us will follow over time. But I think the speed with which that change can occur should accelerate. I'm concerned about the negativity towards EVs in Britain that's happening at the moment due to a lack of infrastructure, due to some negative sound bites about the volume of rubber coming off the tires, etc. But when I see what China is doing to drive, for example, EVs and some of these initiatives, I think momentum is there. But it probably is not going as fast as it should or we want it to be honest. It's up to us. And I'm not even perfect by a long way too. I know my behavior is not following my own words to the level that I would like it when convenience calls. A little bit.
Great.
I'm being honest there, you know? Yes.
Great. We have about 10 to 15 minutes left. So, and I have...
Is this all working for you all? I always like to check. You know, yes? Is this helpful? Yeah, good.
Perfect. All right. I'm going to come back to some of my questions, and then we'll come back to the audience. So, you know, keep thinking of anything else you might want to ask Jeremy. You just touched on AI, and I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on any particular trends or innovations that are exciting you right now. When we think about the future of retail, obviously AI and generative AI is going to transform the way that we shop, and it's going to transform the way that retailers operate. But whether it's AI or any other technologies, is there anything out there that's exciting you right now?
Well, I am very excited by technology. I'm at a very personal level, as I'm sure all of you are completely excited by ChatGPT. I'm sure all Google Gemini. I'm sure you're using it all the time. Yes? Are you? Actually, just get a raise of hand. Who's using ChatGPT daily, let's say? Yeah, that's good. You know, I'll just divert for 1 second. You know, I have actually believed strongly that AI, and I argued this back in 2018, I argued it with the CEO of IBM, will steal jobs. And when they used to say to me, yes, but it's going to solve the world's problems, that was the line that DeepMind and IBM and everybody said, oh, it's going to solve the world's problems. It's like, yeah, but it's also going to take away thousands and thousands of jobs. I think that's still true, but I am myself encouraged how ChatGPT is doing what they say. It is improving my work life. It is making me better than just search. And so there are large amounts of AI that are just going to be helpful in a positive way without removing jobs. So let me give you the examples. Where I feel we need it and where I felt we need it is on, first of all, merchandising on e-com to present better the choices that I'm looking for in large volume fashion e-com sites, for example, or beauty sites. I still feel that we're relatively dark ages in presenting to me individually what I probably want from either my historic search or the search that I'm doing, particularly around sizing. I shouldn't have to go and put my size in anymore. It should know me. So I think AI still has a huge role on e-com to anticipate what I want better. I think, you know, back in 2018, we were predicting or wanting that AI would mean that Amazon et al. I would give them my calendar. I would load my Microsoft calendar into my e-com site, and they would send me things that I needed before I knew that I wanted them, because they could see what I was doing. So they would see I'm going on holiday, and they would say, right, we're going to send you these 5 things. We think they'll be useful based on what we know of you. If you like them, pay for them. If you don't, you can return them. So I do believe there is still a great opportunity to make my life more convenient and anticipate what I want using AI in that way. But the final one, and actually again, I'm going to compliment this gentleman here because we sat next to each other, and it was very much where I felt and he's working on, is in-store and basic supply chain operations. There's just huge potential to make the lives of store colleagues, of supply chain colleagues, of operation colleagues just better. Because they would have the technology, whether it's a blend of AI or just handheld technology and scanning technology, to be able to stock take, to price, to change store layouts with speed and ease and less hassle, that I see is still a problem, in the manual, let's call them working areas, which don't and have not been given the tools to do their jobs really, when they're also having their jobs cut, lots of them, or huge pressure on their time.
Yeah, so interesting. I think, AI is going to touch every aspect of the value chain, from product, coming up with the ideas for the product all the way through to, post-consumption and returns. So really fascinating stuff.
Is there any ideas that you guys have got that would be good for everybody to hear? Anybody want to throw an idea in that AI will contribute, do you think? Yes, there's a gentleman, I think, do you mind if I just do that? Just because,
no, go for it.
I'm sure there's lots of rich thought here, and I don't believe... Hang on, there's a microphone coming. Let's just, we've got the time just to...
Hiya. So we're kind of doing it using AI to help people choose their food basket. So that, through using DNA and epigenetics as well. So that way they're choosing the right food for them, and also reducing food waste, and also helping their health and well-being.
So you load your Zoe data profile into...
Oh, don't say that. That's a swear word. No, we have our own,
you have
our own system, which is far better.
Okay. This is an advertising plug, by the way. This is an advertising break.
So I actually think that food waste is one of the biggest impacts on the environment as well.
Yes.
And also, obviously, from a sustainability point of view. So actually, by empowering people to make the right food choices for them, both from a health and from a sustainability point of view, using AI will have a massive impact. The other interesting dichotomy, though, is the more we use AI, the carbon footprint from that is obviously insane.
It is.
And you talk about EVs. I had a meeting with somebody about, because we're a B Corp, they were saying just by swapping from using blue colour ink in your emails to black, if you were using blue, that has a massive impact on the environmental footprint of your email.
Yeah.
So I think, sometimes technology is great, but you've also got to bear in mind, behind the scenes, the environmental impact of a lot of it is enormous.
Yeah. I just want to say one point on that. I notice that for every good step we make forward in sustainability or these initiatives, there is a danger that I'm going to call them the cynics or whoever will put out a counterpoint. I'm not saying yourself because it's true about data centers, but we always have the yes but, and there's a yes but with petrol, there's a yes but with our existing environment, but there's a love of doing a yes but on some of these initiatives. So you're absolutely right that AI does generate huge heat issues and with data centers, but we've got to still be moving forward with positive intent. Otherwise, we'll talk ourselves out of every one of these sustainable initiatives. It's my fear.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for your input. Anyway, next.
Right, so we have, we're down to the final minutes now, but I want to ask you a little bit about loyalty and the proliferation of choice that we've seen when it comes to shopping generally, but if we look specifically at e-commerce, we've seen an explosion in digital channels in recent years, marketplaces, direct-to-consumer, quick commerce, social commerce. I think you said you're on TikTok, is that right? Yeah, there we go. So I guess firstly, what do you make of this proliferation, and how do you see e-commerce evolving in the future?
Well, look, I think that I'm not saying anything profound that all of you don't know, but in this assumption that the 3 things that drives most of what we want is affordable cost, something to do with price, something to do with disposability, let's call it comfort with a brand or a product, and that's trust, And finally, and most importantly, this desire for convenience. The fact that I have had to remove TikTok, even though I've got a channel, because I spent 1.5 hours every night on the damn thing. The ability to be presented a product that I didn't know that I really wanted in my Instagram or TikTok feed and be able to purchase it so simply was extremely helpful. So my disposability and my loyalty to those channels, because they are actually presenting me products, increased because they solve problems I either had or didn't know I had. So I think that those new ways, and the reason I mentioned this sales, TikTok live sales vehicle, is it's a big element of e-commerce in China. Because e-commerce has got, in some ways, humanless, and that's why probably we're still going back to stores, and Gen Zs are, because of sociability or just the human touch. And actually now having Instagram and TikTok live as a sales vehicle, an advertising vehicle, is growing, and I believe will be another technology that we need. So this isn't a very profound statement. I would say those are going to grow. E-commerce, in spite of the doldrums, in many, I believe, will continue to grow because of our love of convenience, because of the choice, and because retailers, some of them will struggle to give the choice that people are wanting, will continue to grow.
So sort of just the natural evolution.
I believe so.
e-commerce.
I believe it's on a relentless growth. Whether it's Amazon that wins all the games or Boohoo and ASOS that can recover, we shall see. But my penny's worth is that it will continue to grow.
Yeah, and also new.
And by the way, so I'll just say one thing. One thing I noticed on this subject, we are quite rightly sad that, the Body Shop and others are going down, and when we walk around our high streets, so many stores are closing and being replaced by either restaurants, which is probably good, or charity, which is questionable, perhaps. When you look at villages, they used to have, and I remember as a kid where I grew up, there was a butcher, there was a post office, it shows how old I am, but there were all these things, they're all homes. It is evolution, and we've had it for 100 years as there's been concentration and closure. I suspect it's just going to continue, as horrible and as painful as that is. It may be replaced by restaurants and other things, but I suspect the impact of e-commerce will continue to hurt retail, even if we do love the sociability and the proximity and the human touch.
Yeah, fewer better stores is probably the way we sum it up. I just want to ask you one final question about loyalty, which we started to touch on. There's been a lot of investment in digitizing loyalty schemes in recent years. We've seen the rise of real-time discounts and somewhat controversial member prices. So I'm curious to know what you make of this. And do you think these initiatives make us more loyal, or does it actually have the opposite effect and make us more promiscuous?
Okay, I'm going to be hands up. I don't have the data to answer that question on whether it is more promiscuous or more loyal. What I
gut feel.
Yeah, okay, but what I first have seen in all the businesses is that loyalty has been an incredibly powerful tool. But, and this is a big but, so I'm going to finish on an insight view. Both with the turnaround of Pandora and with a business I'm even consulting on just yesterday, the big aha piece of data that can be transformative for you if you want to help yourselves or your client is to break down the numbers of people who buy just one product, the numbers who buy 2 or 3, the numbers who buy 5 or 10, and the numbers who buy 20. It follows on the whole an 80-20 rule, plus or minus, that actually 20% of your customers actually buy 80% of your volume. What we spend all our effort on is chasing this huge tail of 80% of the people who buy one product because they are so voluminous. Most retailers and most companies don't look at that breakdown, and so they don't see, and in Pandora what I discovered was that 80% of women were buying 20 or 30 charms, and we did not have a loyalty scheme in a product that was all about collecting, and those groups were the ones making us all the money. It was the same in Sainsbury's. So in fact, the role of loyalty, or the way to think about it, whether you have a product or not, is track down what those people are doing and want, and serve them, and be careful you're not chasing the single buyer who will use up all your energy, all your cost, but bring you far less value.
Yeah.
So I believe in loyalty 100%, and these tools can all work if they're targeted, particularly that group.
Yeah, focusing on your most valuable customers.
Yeah.
I'm not going to let you go just yet. I think we have time for one more question from the crowd, if there's any other burning questions out there. And we've got one in the corner just here.
Thank you for your patience, by the way, and time. I appreciate the attention you've given and the ideas.
Hi there. You speak about the yes, but,
Yes.
and obviously sticky meetings. And, agile ways of working is so aspirational. And I think, and I'm trying to work out the question here, but for the Unilevers of the world, for the Coca-Colas of the world, and even the L'Oreals of the world, I think, a humble brand manager, brand director really want to do that. They want to have a way of being able to work with the machine to do some of these. Have you actually seen it work? Have you seen, if we were advising a brand director within an ecosystem like Unilever to get hold of the data, to come up with a hypothesis and actually see it through, do you have examples of how that's been done, and then how you could advise within that ecosystem?
Yes. The phone call I got in 2000 on about September 15th, I think it was, from my boss was, "Over my dead body, Jeremy, are you going to launch that product?" That was a guy who'd been in the Coca-Cola company for 30 years. He was in charge of Europe, which was a £200 billion business. And I'd been working on Coke Zero as an idea. More importantly, I got data to show that young men in Europe would dramatically increase their consumption if we presented that product versus the red of Coca-Cola, because we discovered that the reason that young men started to drink less in Europe than in the US was because, strangely, surprisingly, psychologically, the red label of Coke made them think that they were a kid again, and in front of their adult friends and themselves, they didn't want to look like a kid. They wanted to drink alcohol and coffee and look adult-like. And that crazy insight that if we made a product in black and called it Coke Zero in this instance, I gave it a benefit, we could talk to young men and add what turns out to be 10 billion sales revenue per year, was something that he rejected. Because he was frightened of innovation, he was frightened of change, he was frightened of risk. What I believe, but you have to decide to do this, is that we have a responsibility to have a point of view on something, to champion it with like a crusade and a commitment if you believe it's right and got data. And then it's a case of getting it in front of the right people. And most intelligent bosses are desperate for ideas to improve a business. In fact, what they're short of is great ideas. They usually have the money, they usually have the resources, they just lack some brilliant ideas. So in my experience, but there is a risk, I did have that boss say that to me, and the only way I survived and got it was that he was fired by the CEO 2 weeks later because he'd been blocking innovation, which I got in front of the CEO. It does mean you sometimes have to play a little bit of the politics and so on to get it to the right people. So it's not without risk or personal risk, but intelligent bosses, when presented well, simply good ideas, fact-based, should be smart enough to see that that's worth backing. And if they're not intelligent, then probably change company.
On that note, I think we are out of time, but I just want to say thank you. It's been fascinating to get your views. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Retail Disrupted. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to support the podcast, please leave a rating or review or share it with others. It really makes a difference.